CG will enter this debate by characterizing the underbuilt counterfactual that opening has sorely neglected. Note that the decline of religion was characterized by the rise of the information age, access to the telegram, radio, and eventually internet connectivity, as well as the establishment of numerous academic institutions, led to a second renaissance of progressive and liberal thought. This led to the rise of feminism, gender theory, and awareness of socio-economic disparity, which is a natural result of the times, along with other liberal and progressive ideologies. With regard to the counterfactual, the decline of religiosity, e.g. the prevalence of spiritual thought and religions, the religious institutions that were ever present in the West necessarily have to adapt in order to maintain its constituency and popularity. This means that in the world without the decline of religiosity, religions have to opt into and have to subscribe to the rise of feminism, gender theory, economic disparity, and liberal ideologies in order to cater to new constituents and to new believers in order to have their religious following. And this means that you have to adapt. We will bite the bullet, though, that certain denominations of religions like Roman Catholicism may be rigid in maintaining their dogmas. But that does not discount the likelihood of new off-branches and denominations of religions popping up. We have seen this many times in the past, like the splitting off of Protestantism or the rise of New Age or animist beliefs in the 60s in the United States. And we think that the scale of these new religious options would likely be popular with people whose beliefs are no longer represented by traditional religions. And there's an incentive for the religious offshoots to exist and grow under the fiat of prosperous religiosity insofar as supply meets demand and religions meet the ideological demands of people, especially with the rise of progressivism and intellectualism. So in the counterfactual, these religious offshoots would necessarily take a share of the current ideological space and dominance of atheism and secularism in the status quo. This counterfactual is extremely important because in order to determine whether we should oppose the decline of religiosity, the degree of harm is also directly determined by the degree of benefit that is absent because of the decline. So now, let's explain why the decline is something that is necessarily harmful. Why is this characterization and reframing extremely important in debate winning? Because the logical endpoint of this analysis is one, it directly counters OO's claims of harmful religious dogmas being prevalent. Because of sublayer A, the same people who desire to opt out of religious and conservative religions have more options on our side. Not just atheism or secularism, but other more liberal and accepting religions, like the importation of syncretic religions influenced by Eastern beliefs, or generally more lax religions that still provide the benefits of meaning and purpose. So this is logically prior to the claims of opening government. And sublayer B, that religions are forced to become better when secularism and conservatism no longer have an oligopoly over the ideological space of Western culture. When the ideological space is no longer subdivided between not believing in God and believing in a God that is restrictive, there's more competition to retain believers and constituents. Further innovation and accommodation is incentivized. Because when we think about Western religion in the past, Western religion was primarily dominated by organized religious institutions. And these religious institutions are incentivized to maintain their power by retaining their believers and having hegemony through the amount of believers that they had. But if your believers are no longer able to subscribe to your ideologies due to the rise of the information age, as I've previously mentioned, then there is a need for other religions to cater to these people rather than the rise of secularism and atheism in the decline of religiosity that we see in status quo. But then two, the logical endpoint of this framing is that it also provides the missing wing that OG fails to provide as to why, if status quo is bad, why the alternative to decline is better. And it's important to have this wing in order to truly prove that we should oppose the decline of religiosity. So, with that set up, a few more pieces of strategic analysis and weighing. So first, that the consolidation of power exists equally in opposition. The failures that they say of the abuse of power, for example, exist equally as much in opposition side, except it exists under a different label. It exists under the label of capitalism. It exists under the label of state secularism. It exists under the label of political power being consolidated in the hands of the rich that still continue to abuse their power. And I think this is something that has been much more prevalent due to the decline of religiosity, insofar as religious institutions with moral frameworks that have had to cater to the people are no longer the primary mode of organization. Rather, it is the mode of organization is the rich and the powerful who are able to do whatever they want, where the rich and the powerful eat the weak because they're able to do whatever they want with the billions of dollars that they have, regardless of whether or not people believe that they are right. See the eat the rich movement. The rich don't have to cater to the needs of the people, but religious organizations do. So we think in terms of fulfilling people's in terms of creating a society that is catered more towards the people on the ground, in terms of providing fulfillment and purpose, I think you get it better on our end, especially with the reframing that we introduce. But then second, I think another harm that status quo has to contend with the decline of religiosity, is the rise of individualism. The rise of individualism being a particularly harmful thing when you see like the two-party system in the United States failing because everyone is turned against each other in an increasingly polarized environment where everyone is fighting for themselves and are no longer able to undertake effective collective action against structural systems that oppress them. And we think this rise of individualism is attributed to the fact that even communities of atheistic people generally have differing beliefs insofar as religious institutions are much more effective at gathering like shared collective beliefs rather than atheist people or secular people who may have very different systems of philosophy and logic and belief and are likely to have different segmentized philosophical and epistemic systems. But before we move on, I'll take a POI from closing. 5, 4, 3, go.
May I start? So
Go.
corporates shouldn't abuse their employees as well because they want to retain their employees. They have profit-based incentives. They want to gain traction. They still get abused because the individual actors are abusive. Unless you can prove the individual actors within religion are not going to be abusive, you can't take them.
I think to a certain extent on either end of this debate, we have to bite the bullet that there will always be abusive actors who abuse power. It's in human nature. The question is, where is it more likely to happen? And I already provide you that crucial tipping point when I explain to you why billionaires, the rich, and state secularism is not beholden to the demands of the people because their systems of structure and power are beholden or created through the power of wealth and money, not through the power of collective action that exists in the communities that religions are able to create. So I think it is harder for people or religious leaders to do bad things, like the Pope cannot actively bomb a country because then he will lose the support of his followers. And I think in the same way, the new institutions and religions that develop on our end are more likely to cater to people on the ground. So with this, we are able to co-opt the benefits of opening government in terms of the benefits they provide, in terms of meaning. We explain to you more clearly the harms of individualism and the harms of the decline of religiosity, and why in the status quo and in the counterfactual, why the rise of new religions that cater to people's needs are far better off. For all of these reasons, I think it's a clear CG win already. Thank you.